Hello, class. I will be doing my presentation on Outkast. Most of you are familiar with the group, the duo that was very active in the late 90s and early 2000s. Um, and some of you were lucky enough, some of you grew up listening to their music, like I was. Um, but I shall dig deeper into who is Outkast for those of you who may not be aware or who may not know as much as you thought you did. Um, okay. Okay, so who is Outkast? They originally called themselves Two Shades Deeper, but later renamed to Outkast. Um, After their first meeting with Ellie Reed, it did result in a rejection since he couldn't see the stardom in them yet. So they were the regular boys that you would see from like the projects or the hood, as some of you would call it. Um, Big Boy did have some interactions with the not so legal side of things, and Andre, he was just into like small things like that, just trying to be like his older relatives in that way. But they did manage to meet one another, though, even though they did live in the projects at their local high school. So it was a high school that was a magnet school outside of the area that they lived. If we go here, this high school happened to have rap battles in the cafeteria. So at this high school, at first it was kind of a rivalry, as young men tend to start off with, but then later it built on to a friendship because they could recognize that each other's talents did show during those rap battles. Um, so through that, they did connect with a group called Organized Noise Production. Um, they were able to work in what was known as the dungeon and join the dungeon family. It was just a studio in the basement of one of the organized noise members' homes, or their parents' homes precisely. Uh, but Outkast did rebrand themselves and worked harder in the dungeon studios after that rejection. Um, they practiced, doing different forms of what they would consider boot camp. Uh, that meant running around the block saying their rhymes, or they would, you know, take those chances to like have their rhymes reviewed, and then they were told to like rewrite them with better lyrics, or more of stories related to it, or anything that could help them improve the organized noise kept pushing for. And then after much persistence and training, they did get signed to LA Reid's LA Face production record company. That was a by chance because, again, he saw them perform on stage this time and he couldn't say no after that because they did have the talents needed to be a star. And they were able to debut on the Christmas album that was released by the company, with the song called Players Ball. This song was significant because the lyrics did reflect the lifestyle of gangster rap, but also made it conscientious rap by making people aware that Christmas in the hood wasn't anything different than what their activities would be on a regular day. That was the reflection of it, that holidays didn't really sadly make much of a difference for those who did not have much in the first place. Um, so, yeah, it just reinforced what most people already lived through and brought it to light on a Christmas album. Okay, so the impact was definitely 80s, 90s. South was not a part of the story for hip hop. They did not have a place. Okay, the atmosphere of rap in the mid to early 90s was between West and East Coast. They were either throwing raps at each other or had beef with one another for personal reasons. The South did not have a large stakehold on the hip hop playing field, besides the song like what Whoop There It Is or something. If you know that reference, congratulations, you are within my age group. But yeah, the graph here shows the percentage, just a estimate of my own personal opinion of what was consistent with the times at that period. Um, so yeah, we didn't have much going on just yet, not yet at least. But if we look at their discography here, they did have four group albums, and I say group because the last one was a split between their solo albums released on one album, so I don't necessarily count that. But these four albums were the ones that kind of shifted music itself for the hip hop scene, and then also the mainstream field as well. But let's get into it. Here we have, I know this sounds like a doozy. It's not Mary Poppins, but this is the Southern Playalistic Cadillac music. Ironic. So at 19 years of age, this album was their debut for Outkast, and this was them at their least refined, which shocked a lot of people. Um, the first album was really critically acclaimed. Many people were able to see that they had their own style. It wasn't something mimicking East and West Coast. Um, it definitely had a lot of funk and soul because both of the artists did have, their own, role models. Some of them were Prince, other ones were, you know, idols that were related to rock or like, the kind of pop white artist scene that you wouldn't expect a playa or a rap gangster to have, but they were very much included in their form of music play. Um, and at the Source Awards, this was the basically the Grammys for hip hop back then. Um, Andre and Big Boy went on stage and they were greeted by boos, and they definitely had something to say. And so Andre left this note saying, nobody want to hear it, but it's like this. The South's got something to say. And then the next release was definitely something to say. This is the ATL Liens. So Atlanta and Aliens put together, just they focus on the acronym of ATL, put into the title. This sold a lot of copies when with the feature track called Elevators. But it was definitely radical in a sense that it had challenged this like Afrofuturism that wasn't necessarily at play just yet. Um, Hence the name ATL, Aliens. Um, and the lyricism is less about the Southern lifestyle this time around. They did earn income, right? Their budget did increase, so it did reflect the up and coming artists that they were and the issues that they faced as they were up and coming. You know, once one person comes out of that situation, it's usually expected that you bring others up with you, and that's a lot of people to bring up from the project. So, you know, there were many relationship problems and anxiety, and just feeling as if they were not just outcasts anymore, but now just like extraterrestrial beings in their own world. But they did become more confident. They were able to, focus in on their individuality themselves within the duo. Andre 2000 was the most visible difference. He did become more spiritual and vegetarian. He quit alcohol and smoking. They even had different buses at times between him and Big Boy when they would travel to do tours. They challenged the archetype of rapper or gangster. It couldn't be applied to the mold that they were making for themselves at this point. Um, but again, as the budget increased, as I said prior, their access to live instruments was available to them as well. So that added to their growing sound. And then we have Aqua Mini. This one was the Aquarius and Gemini put together, which is what their horoscope signs were. And it debatably had the best bars that they've dropped in their career. It earned 5 mics from the Source magazine, the awards, same people who do the award ceremony, and it's now recognized as a classic album in the hip hop world. It focused on balance between gangster rap and Andre's leftist styling, which was becoming more and more like free and liberal in a sense, because again, he was on a spiritual journey. And Big Boy definitely kept to the clear street cred that he wanted to keep focusing on, because that's the audience that he wanted to keep, that they had in the beginning to the end. Um, but they still had success, even though they were going very different ways, and people were definitely questioning if they would last. And that's when Stankonia came in. Stankonia is a trademark album. Every song, almost every single person knows from this album, or there's no way not to know um, this album. It earned Grammys for Best Rap and Best Performance by a Rap Duo Group, especially with the heartfelt Miss Jackson. Um, Speaking of Miss Jackson, that track was the track that made people aware of the emotions that could come with men and kind of challenged toxic masculinity or black masculinity. That was kind of the trend to be like hard and aggressive and be more so like, okay, I'm not really the best dad, but I'm trying my best and I apologize to the mother of my child, the mother of my child, the grandmother, that I'm not, the best option. Stankonia went into uncharted territory and extremes. It pushed the envelope to explore other areas of music, prove that rappers can do more than just rap. Most of the tracks became pop hits. Bags Over Bad Dad or B.O.B. showed viewers that same places where shootouts occur, can also be places where kids, play or play tag and things like that. But it challenged a hard image, as I said prior, that were related to Black male masculinity. And yeah, I think it's a good track. I still sing along with it today. And then the exam track that we'll have is the Hey Ya. It's been trending all over again. It's something that is a song that can never be out of style. Early hip hop was not popular for being vulnerable and showing intimacy, but they kept with that kind of idea with inflicting the emotions and showing that, they're people too. They're not just, these characters or stereotypes or tropes. So yeah, it has more alternative rock in it than hip hop, the track itself. It does have like a funky tune that overshadows the message of the lyrics that are kind of like dark and dreary. Um, it's a little depressing to see that the lyrics that they were portraying in the song were actually validated with the hype that the song received. Honestly, uh, basically, the song depicts the frustration with expectations towards love and the acknowledgement that the listeners aren't actually listening to what they're saying in the words, they're just listening to the fun tune of the track itself. So that just reflected more and more of what Outkast was trying to prove a point towards. And they gave an identity to the South. Outkast was not the first, but they definitely pushed the limits. They were definitely showing that the South was youthful. They were hungry for, making music and producing things that, were new and different as MCs and artists. Um, Even with the view being as weird for West and East standard, they were able to nullify that and apply kind of their own genre within that space as well. The Speaker Box and Love Below are the solo albums that were put together as one album that I mentioned prior. And it's the last track that they've made besides the remastered ones that they've released of old songs. Uh, but yeah, and here are my sources in the bibliography. Thank you for listening to my lecture. I have included the notes if anyone needs them, but yes, enjoy. Have a nice one.